order. Start with a roll call.
Commencing roll call now. Vice Chair Blair Whitney.
Here.
Councilmember Juan Carlos Prado. Councilmember Everardo Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Niket Searcy.
Here.
Councilmember Kathleen Daly.
Here.
Councilmember George Salmon.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly Parisi.
Present.
Councilmember Mariela Peralta.
Here.
Chair Brooks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 2, public comment. Anyone may speak for 2 minutes on any topic not on the agenda. If you're in the room, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to the clerk. Those online may use the raised hand feature in Zoom. Please note that the council may not discuss or take action on items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
We do. We have a few speaker slips. When I call your,
They got one more
Oh.
too.
thank you. Yeah, when I call your name, you may come up to the podium and you will have 2 minutes to speak. I'd like to call Kent Mansky. You may speak. Hi. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Hello, council. Thank you for your service. I'm Kent Mansky. I'm representing the Center for Creativity, a vision for a dedicated art center in San Mateo County. I have been pleased to, for the last 3 years, kept you informed of the activities of this vision and the steering committee. On January 1st, I sent you all the feasibility study results. We are really excited that we have 2 public events coming up where the public will have the opportunity to learn about the feasibility study, the vision for an art center, and give us additional input on what they'd like to see in an art center in their area or somewhere in San Mateo County. The feasibility study that we presented to you has already been presented to the county executive team, the County Arts Council, Commission, the Redwood City Council, the Redwood City Arts Commission, developers, philanthropists, and all kinds of organizations. We are so ready for this public event. These are public events coming up. Rather than spend my 2 minutes with dates, I strongly recommend you go to, I'm going to say the website twice, rwcfc.org. rwcfc.org. Here you'll learn about our work for the last 11 years, our incredible dedication the last 3 years, these community events, and the incredible number of local sponsors we have supporting us at this local event to talk about art and an art center. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Kent. I'd like to call Marjorie Powell up. Next, we have Keith. Can I use microphone or? Okay.
Hi, council members. My name is Margie Power, and I am co-president and co-founder of Leadership Council San Mateo County. And I'm just here to share about our organization. We are a cross-sector countywide leadership professional nonprofit. And our goal is to connect, inspire, and transform our county by connecting senior level leaders and emerging leaders from all 3 sectors, private sector, nonprofit, and government sector, for 2 10-month programs, 1 day a month. And we want to encourage you all to consider participating in our programs, and then to also reach out to your networks of people in your community. We want to make sure that everyone has heard about our programs. We currently have 80 people coming through our 2 classes, 70% people of color. One of our core goals is to diversify leadership across the county. And we always balance it across the 3 sectors and geographically. So we have people from Daly City, Pescadero, East Palo Alto, Redwood City, et cetera. And we would love for members of this community to participate as well. We actually have Kenny Chu, who's a graduate from our program. And I would love an opportunity to follow up maybe with the clerk with more information. Applications for our programs open on Friday, March 1st. So we wanted to come early, make sure that you all heard about us. We have scholarships available. And we look forward to sharing more and hopefully seeing some of you in our classes. I did bring some information cards that maybe should I leave with the clerk? Okay, great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call Keith Miller. In 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Keith Miller. I'm the Operations Director for a small nonprofit here in North Fair Oaks called Generations United. It was founded almost 20 years ago by my wife, Angie Ibarra. We serve the economically disadvantaged through a lot of different programs, but I'm not here to talk with you about that. We have a small location at Second and Bay. That lot and 7 other contiguous lots were purchased by a development company by Bauer. Nothing unusual about that. That happens all the time. They're preparing to sell that to Stanford, and they will develop 185,000 square foot life sciences building on that property. Why that's concerning is because there are only a finite amount of space in North Fair Oaks. I live here, my wife and I live on 4th and Fair Oaks. The challenge is if a developer comes in, buys it legally, of course, nothing about that, goes through zoning and it's within plan, they can tie up that property, never get that back. And the challenge is the families that we serve on Barron and mobile homes, we have a family of 7 and a 24-foot camper trailer, are now looking at a multi-million-dollar 3- and 4-story steel and glass building. There's nothing out of plan. There's nothing out of zoning. There's nothing unusual about that, with the exception that we're asking Stanford and other developers, that just happen to be the one today, to do what's right for the community and to give back to the community. Now, what the North Fair Oaks Council can do, and we can talk at a later time, is to talk about strategies on how to do that to make it a requirement, because they won't play unless they have to. The other piece is the major campus here on between Broadway and Bay. They were supposed to give $1.8 billion of exactments. I would like to ask this council to look into whether that money was accurately spent, whether it was actually spent, and where did it go? So 2 things. One is looking back retroactively. Second one is looking forward for North Fair Oaks.
Thank you.
Last call for public comment. Back to you, Chair.
Hey, thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, North Fair Oaks Council election of chair and vice chair. We'll start with a call for nominations for the chair for the coming year. Are there any nominations from the floor? Ever?
I can nominate. I'd like to nominate Kathleen Daly for chair. And should we do the vice chair at once, or we can come back?
We'll
to
do
that?
chair and then vice chair.
It's at the discretion of the chair.
Okay, let's do chair first and then vice chair. Do we require a second on the nomination?
Typically for nominations, you hold them open until it's clear there are no further nominations, or you can do it by motion where there's a motion and a second for slate.
Okay.
But if you're doing one, you use the entire process.
Okay, so just, no need for a second, call for nominations,
Correct.
close it. And is that a voice vote or is that?
It could be a voice vote. Yes, there are no members participating electronically, so it can be by voice vote.
I got a question. I noticed that Juan Prado is not here tonight. It would probably be unsportsmanlike to nominate him in his absence. But I'm tempted to, just because I know he has some experience and I like to see a competitive race versus coronation.
There's no legal requirement that a person be present to be nominated.
All right, I move to nominate Juan Prado.
Are there other nominations from the floor? I believe we have to do a roll call and indicate choices.
You could do it by voice vote. No, under the circumstances, I think you would say all those casting their vote and for each nominee and count the votes.
Okay, so raising hands or,
That would work too, so long as you announce what the vote is.
okay, very good. I wasn't sure. disclosure.
Mhm.
Can we vote twice or just once?
Is it, is
Vote
the,
once, please. And no out-of-state funding, corporate PAC money.
I have a question, Brooks. I'm so sorry, this is not formality, but can we understand who the vice chair options are? But like, to me, that impacts a lot of things.
Maybe read the bylaws and the description of the job that we're hiring for.
Meaning who is being nominated for vice chair? I don't know.
As of right now, we're just nominating the chair and voting for that. Afterwards, we nominate the vice chair. We can look at a chair and vice chair as a slate together if we choose to do so. As of right now, we're not doing that though, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, sometimes people set up a campaign and they run as a ticket, but it's better to just do it in the room and see what happens.
So we have two nominations for chair. Are there any other nominations for chair?
Can I ask another question to,
Certainly.
town council? So what would happen if, say, we had a majority voting for Juan Carlos who's absent? Because one issue is that in the past, there have been nominations for a person who's actually present, but that person declines to take on that. And then, so we have to do the nomination again until somebody is nominated and actually accepts, gets the votes and that's it. And that's it. So what would happen in this case?
Vice chair would run it until you get a new chair.
Under those circumstances, the person elected as vice chair would become the presiding officer of this meeting. And if a person nominated received a majority of votes cast, but declined to serve, there would immediately be the need to call a new election. Probably under those circumstances, I would recommend that you would conduct a new election for both of the officers under those circumstances.
Thank you.
Very good. Then there are no further nominations. We'll close nominations. We do an all in favor hand raise of individual names, or I'm really not clear.
Yeah, you could say all those wishing to cast a vote for candidate one, and then everybody raises their hands, you record the vote. Those casting a vote in favor of candidate two, you count. If one carries a majority of the council, they're elected.
Then all those in favor of Kathleen serving as chair for the coming year, please raise your hand. We have five.
You're allowed.
Juan's not here to cast the vote either, so we assume it'd be for himself.
And those in favor of
Abstain.
Juan Carlos? Three. Voted 5-3. Kathleen Daly is our new chair for the coming year.
Fair, honest election.
Meeting, Madam Chair, would you like to pick up the agenda from here, and run the election for vice chair?
Sure. Okay. Open up the nominations for vice chair for North Oaks Community Council. Me?
Nominate, oh, please.
I'd
Go
like
ahead.
to nominate vice chair, current vice chair Blair Whitney for another term. If he's up for it.
I'm willing to accept, but I'm also willing to nominate anyone else that wants a turn, because I've done it for two. So anyone feeling moved to serve, I'll nominate him.
Why not?
We have, oh, please, cheers. I've got to get out of the chairman. I'll take it.
We got two nominees.
We have two nominees. Okay, is there a third? Brooks, are you interested in?
I think I'll sit this
Yes,
one.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a vote then on George and Blair Whitney for vice chair. Good vote for George. Raise your hand.
It's considering there is not necessarily voting for him.
Clicking unanimous then.
All right.
There we go.
I think we have a majority. George,
Sure.
welcome to vice chair. All right. It'll be fun.
Graceful transition of power.
All right, moving on then to item number 4, the informational session on the North Fair Oaks Rail Crossing and Community Connection Study. I believe we have someone from the county office, Joel Slavitt, here to present. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Joel Slavitt with the Office of Sustainability. I'm also the project manager for this study, and with me I have Greg Kyle, who's our consultant, who will be providing this presentation. Before I turn it over to Greg, I just want to share a few brief words. Back in June of 2022, we introduced this council to the study, sharing its purpose, the approach, and planned engagement activities, including the first round of engagement that helped shape the development of our study goals. In June of 2023, we shared information on 3 different proposed rail crossing options, different types of accompanying bicycle and pedestrian improvements in the neighborhoods on both sides of the tracks, and findings from our second round of outreach. Since that time, we've continued to work with our technical partners, and we took a deeper dive with Caltrans and learned a lot more regarding the challenges and constraints with our rail crossing options. The purpose of our presentation today is to not only provide a recap of the past presentations, but also to update you on what we've learned since last June and to circle back to inform you how that has shaped the study findings. We're also interested in receiving any feedback you have to share with us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg.
Next slide, please. Good evening. We've structured our presentation to cover 3 primary topics. The first topic will be a high-level overview of the study process, the crossing options that were advanced, and the input that we received from the community as part of the process. We'll then explain some of the constraints that are impacting the ability to make a recommendation for the crossing option of the rail corridor at this time. And we'll wrap it up with a summary of key conclusions and considerations. Next slide, please. And so the purpose of this study was to build on prior county plans to explore the feasibility for a new bike and pedestrian crossing of the Caltrain tracks, along with also looking at safety improvements within the adjacent neighborhoods geared towards cyclists and pedestrians. And the prior plans that we built upon included, as shown on the slide, the 2011 North Fair Oaks Community Plan, as well as the 2021 unincorporated San Mateo County Active Transportation Plan. Early in the study process, we worked with stakeholders in the community to develop a set of goals for the corridor crossing options. And those goals are shown on the right side of the slide. And just expanding a little bit on the definition of each of those goals. The access goal was geared towards improving bicycle and pedestrian access, both across the railroad tracks as well as within the neighborhoods on either side of the track. The community integration goal was geared towards trying to advance facilities that would enhance a sense of community and incorporate aesthetic items such as public art to create a nice sense of place and attractive facility. The constructability goal was, to the extent possible, advance a crossing option that would limit adverse construction impacts and also strive to contain the construction and maintenance costs of whatever is built. The equity consideration was providing equitable transportation improvements, especially considering those without access to a car or those with mobility challenges. And the final goal, safety, was to design facilities that create safe places and provide a sense of security. Next slide, please. This map presents the crossing options that were advanced for further analysis throughout the study. First shown as option A in the purple up there is the Dumbarton Avenue tunnel options, which is a tunnel or undercrossing underneath the railroad tracks that aligns with Dumbarton Avenue. Option B, which is shown in blue in the graphic, is the Dumbarton Avenue bridge option, which is a bridge that crosses over the Caltrain tracks in the vicinity of both Pacific Avenue and Dumbarton Avenue. And option C is the Middlefield Junction bridge option, which is shown in orange. And this is a long bridge that crosses the railroad tracks near Buckingham Avenue and would tie into the Middlefield Junction development site on the north side of the tracks. Something to note is that all of the corridor crossing options would have both ramps and stairs on both sides of the tracks. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates how the Dumbarton Avenue Tunnel option, option A, could look. A couple things to note about this option is that it requires the shortest crossing distance and the least change in elevation. To go underneath the tracks, you don't have to go as far underground as you have to go above ground to go over the top of the tracks. As part of our outreach, we did hear concerns in particular about a sense of safety and security with the tunnel option. And so we tried to illustrate some ways that you could alleviate some of those concerns. In the top right corner of the slide, with number 2 that's illustrated there, shows, trying to develop a well-lit space, incorporating public art, including elements such as a skylight to allow natural light to provide a better sense of place and sense of security. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates what option B, the Dumbarton Avenue Bridge, could look like. One thing to note is the elevation of the bridge, which is about 5 stories roughly high in the air to get over the top of the railroad tracks, as well as the electrification equipment that has been installed. And we'll delve a little bit deeper into that on a subsequent slide. And so with the elevation change, it does require a longer distance to get from one side of the tracks to the other. This slide does also illustrate some opportunities to incorporate artwork with some of the murals that are included along the ramps that are part of this illustration. Next slide. And this slide illustrates option C, the Middlefield Junction Bridge. As I mentioned, this is the longest of the crossing options because the bridge ties in further to the north of the railroad tracks. And so you can see in the top right-hand corner, it illustrates the length of the bridge. Similar to the option B, it would require the higher elevation to provide the clearance over the Caltrain tracks and the electrification equipment. Another element beyond looking at the crossing, railroad crossing options as part of the study was looking at potential surface street improvements in the neighborhoods on either side of the railroad tracks. And this slide shows examples of some of the different types of improvements that could be layered in and advanced either with or without a railroad crossing option. And on a subsequent slide, we will share input that we received from the community on which of these community connections options they supported the most. The initial round of community engagement for this project was conducted in the summer of 2022. But before sharing the results, just wanted to give an overview of some of the efforts that were undertaken throughout the study to effectively be able to receive input from the community. The county partnered with Nuestra Casa, a local community-based organization, and their team of promotoras to really be able to reach out and effectively engage with the community through a variety of techniques, which included pop-up events, door-to-door canvassing, as well as a more traditional type of open house type of meeting. A number of surveys were conducted both online as well as in person. And throughout the entire length of the project, materials were always provided in both English and Spanish to allow everyone to have an opportunity to provide input. So the key findings from the first round of the community survey included some of the things that are shown on the right side of this slide that really demonstrates the desire in the community for a new railroad crossing. It includes 37% of the participants in the survey currently drive a car to get from one side of the tracks to the other, but they would prefer to walk or bike if they had that option. And about 30% of the respondents that already walk or bike to get from one side of the tracks to the other really find it difficult. So they sometimes don't make the trip as often as they would if it was more convenient. And 22% don't travel to places on the other sides of the tracks or do so less often because of the challenges associated with it. Also summarized on the bottom of this slide is some further input that was received. Some of the top issues that the community expressed in terms of affecting their comfort when walking or biking include high car speeds in the streets within the neighborhoods, as well as poor lighting in the neighborhood streets and along the sidewalks. In terms of priorities that were identified for a new rail crossing, items that were identified included convenience, security, and the ability to access the crossing. The second round of community engagement for the project was conducted in the spring of 2023. And the focus of this round of community engagement was to get feedback on the 3 rail crossing options that were advanced as part of the study. And some of the key findings are displayed on this slide. They included the Dumbarton Avenue Bridge, option B, was the one crossing option that garnered the most support, and it was followed by option C, the Middlefield Junction, or the Middlefield Bridge option, Junction Bridge. The Dumbarton Avenue Tunnel, option A, was the least popular of the 3 crossing options, but it did get more support from the community than a do-nothing option of not providing a new crossing at all. Some other input from the community was concern over the loss of on-street parking, as all of the options would require the removal of some of the on-street parking in the area. And that was something that was expressed. And then in terms of the community connection improvements within the adjacent neighborhoods on either side of the tracks, the improvements that received the most support included improving the lighting along sidewalks and within crosswalks, adding higher visibility crosswalks to really make it easier to see pedestrians that are crossing the street, and also adding accessible curb ramps to help the mobility challenged be able to get around the neighborhood better. Going to shift the focus of the presentation now to some of the constraints that were identified as part of the study process, beginning with the Caltrain electrification constraints. Caltrain has recently installed electrification equipment that will, in the near future, begin to power the trains within that corridor. And that equipment presents a constraint, in particular for the 2 bridge options, B and C, that will have to not only provide the clearance above the trains that operate along the tracks, but also above this electrification equipment that's been installed. And that's what's causing the 2 bridge alternatives to have to be so high up in the air to provide that clearance over the electrification equipment. We did, as part of the effort, there was coordination with the Caltrain team to see if there could be an opportunity or if it was possible to lower the electrification equipment. And we were told it is possible, but it's something that costs a lot of money, would be disruptive to Caltrain's service, and really were discouraged from pursuing that by Caltrain because of the impacts that they felt that it would have on their opportunity to run their trains in the corridor by the time that the bridge would be constructed. The second set of constraints that were identified through the process are potential conflicts with 2 major water lines that are owned by the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. One of the lines crosses the Caltrain corridor at an angle, and that's the Hetch Hetchy line, which is the major source of the water for this area of the peninsula. And then the Palo Alto pipeline branches off of the Hetch Hetchy and runs along Westmoreland Avenue parallel to the rail corridor and provides the source of water to Palo Alto as well as some additional communities. And so the two options, A and B, are located in close proximity or actually cross over those water lines and raised concerns from the Public Utilities Commission. And they actually provided a letter stating their opposition and concerns to the options A and B through the coordination that was conducted. This slide summarizes the constraints that are associated with the three crossing options, and reading across from left to right. As I mentioned, the conflicts with the Utility Commission's water lines impact options A and B. With the Caltrain electrification equipment, poses conflict with option B and C. Option C, in addition to crossing the Caltrain tracks, the longer bridge also crosses over some tracks that are a spur that could connect to the Dumbarton Rail Corridor. And so just another challenge, another requirement forces that bridge to be longer is having to cross over that additional set of railroad tracks. Construction impacts were identified for options B and C. One of the primary construction conflicts is work windows. In order to be able to construct over the Caltrain system, they would have to de-energize the electrification system that powers the trains. And so it would force a lot of the construction activities to have to occur in the middle of the night when they would have the opportunity to de-energize their system. Engagement was identified as a constraint, in particular for option A, because of the number of concerns that we heard from the community about safety and a sense of security associated with a tunnel or an undercrossing alternative. And then parking, all three options impact parking in the neighborhood. Something to note, though, is that option C has a larger impact on parking and may also impact parking within the North Fair Oaks Health Center on site, as well as the parking along the streets in the neighborhood. So with this message, we did conduct another round of community engagement. It occurred primarily in December of 2023. And as part of this, a few efforts were conducted. One was smaller group community conversations with stakeholders, including members of the Studies Community Advisory Committee, as well as the Nuestra Casa staff and the promotoras. In addition, there was a community open house that was conducted here in that time frame. And this round of outreach focused on the need for a more in-depth conversation with the community to explain the constraints that have been encountered as part of this study and why within the time frame of this project, we're not going to be able to make a recommendation for a preferred crossing option. And the slide does provide some of the key takeaways from this round of engagement. And one thing that was noted from the community was just an appreciation for the engagement that occurred throughout the process, even when having to deliver a tough message like the one delivering tonight. They also verified that the way that we had, summarized their input had been accurate, and that, they did feel like the community had been heard throughout the process. That being said, there was disappointment that was voiced over the difficulty of being able to advance a new rail crossing, a recommendation for a new rail crossing at this point in time. Community also expressed a desire to continue efforts to try to see if these constraints can be resolved and if a crossing option can be advanced in the future. And then there was a lot of widespread support for implementing the community connection improvements, even separate from a new rail crossing, doing that along a more accelerated timeline while the issues associated with constraints of the rail crossing could be worked out. So in summary, the conclusions and considerations, the community has expressed support for a new bridge crossing of the tracks. However, the array of complexities that have been encountered with the rail crossing options is preventing a recommendation at this point in time. That being said, there's been a lot of work that's been done that provides a wealth of information, both on the community input as well as the technical information pointing to where a crossing could be located, what it may look like, as well as the constraints that will need to be addressed moving forward. I think the glass half full coming out of this is that the community connection options, the neighborhood improvements aren't dependent on a rail crossing, and they could be advanced along a separate timeline, faster to provide some benefits in the short term with the neighborhood. And at this point, there's some exploration that's ongoing in terms of, are there any potential funding opportunities for some of the community connection improvements? And I'll turn it back over to Joel to explain some of the things that the county is taking a look at right now.
Thanks, Greg. As Greg pointed out, while we are not making a recommendation for a rail crossing at this time, there are things we can do with the service street improvements, the bicycle and pedestrian improvements in the neighborhoods on both sides of the tracks. There are opportunities that can occur through grant funding awards as part of public works road projects, and also from the land use development. One thing I will point out with the Middlefield Junction Affordable Housing Project, that is actually moving forward in part through grant funds that are not only helping the housing development, but are also providing for transportation improvements, some of which are occurring in the study area. And those include implementation of some of the bicycle boulevards that are called out in our active transportation plan. So there'll be bicycle sharrows and then signage on a number of the streets within our study area. In addition, some of the top improvements that we heard that were desired by the community, the high visibility crosswalks, ADA accessible curb ramps at intersections. They're providing a number of those. There are also bulb outs, curb extensions in some areas that actually serve to provide traffic calming on streets. And so that is something that is actually underway now. The funding has been secured and construction will be happening in the next few years. Greg alluded to the county exploring grant opportunities. We actually submitted an application to CCAG for their Lifeline Transportation Program to do some of the exact same stuff that the Middlefield Junction Affordable Housing Project is doing. The same type of improvements, except we're doing them in areas where the Middlefield Junction Affordable Housing Project was not able to cover. So we're like extending bicycle and pedestrian safety and access improvements. And then with that, it will also tie into the larger network in the area. As you know, the Middlefield Road Improvement Project, there's bicycle and pedestrian improvements that are happening there. And then on El Camino, on the other side of the tracks, Caltrans has a pavement maintenance project where they're also doing complete streets improvements, they will be providing bikeways on El Camino, in addition to pedestrian improvements as well. So there are a number of activities that the county is being proactive to try to start implementing these community connection improvements. And then you can go to the next slide. So our draft study report had been out for a while. We also have released the final study report. And you can see from the web link to both the report and the accompanying appendices. I can just briefly share some of the differences between what previously came out with the draft report. We subsequently had, our third round of community engagement. So there's like more detail provided on that. We also have expanded language on considerations that the county can take with implementing the community connection, something that can happen in a shorter time frame in a rail crossing. And so those are the primary updates between the draft and the final report. In terms of next steps, we, in addition to coming to the community council, we also presented to our bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee and the planning commission last week. And then on March 26th, we will take the report to the board. And so that
Please.
Greg and Joel, thank you for this. I'm new to this, so please indulge me a little on some of perhaps things that others are more informed on. One procedural question, you mentioned this third study, and thank you for providing the detailed information on the first two in terms of how many people participated and what their responses were. I have a question on that, which is, you had 390 on the first, 350 on the first one, 770 on the other. I'm curious what the third was and also what the total population of that community is. So I'd love to know. I didn't see the third in this packet, but it may be too new. It's just not here. And maybe this is something you've already shared with folks, but I'm very curious what the budgetary restraints are on each of these options. I'm sure that wasn't part of the survey and I don't intend to conflate those things, but I'm curious like what the costs are for A, B, and C.
So I can speak to the outreach. So really, the type of outreach that occurred in the third round had a different focus than the first two rounds. The first two rounds, we were trying to reach as many people as possible and did a pretty extensive effort with that, with all the different types of outreach that Greg described earlier. I mean, like reaching 770 participants in a survey was pretty impressive. Particularly, it was really hard to
In the
reach out.
community, I get
Yes.
it. I totally get it.
Yes, and so what the intent of the third round of community outreach was to circle back with those that had been following us closely throughout the process, particularly representatives from our community advisory, actually. And I'd like to acknowledge both Ever and Blair, who actually served in our community advisory. They participated with us. And so we felt it was really important for our third round of outreach to circle back and not just leave people hanging like what's the status, what's happening. And so the goal of the third round wasn't so much to try to have like conversations to the same number of people, because we realized it was something that we had to kind of spend some time. And unlike the first two rounds where we're kind of doing like intercept surveys, people, you might be able to spend 10 to 15 minutes. We had like food, we had childcare. We spent an evening with folks in our open house, and then also had a separate follow-up with stakeholders that had been with us throughout the process. So it was a little bit of a different approach. I think the open house, I think we had like between 40 and 50 members of the public that attended. And then the community conversations that we had with our stakeholders, those really were intended to be small kind of focus group orientation. And so I think the attendance of those, it kind of ranged from like 6 to 10 folks at each of those, and we had 3 of those. And I think you also asked a question about the cost of the rail crossings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a big swing between them.
So that isn't like, these numbers will have to be further fleshed out, and we learned a lot more from Caltrain regarding additional constraints, that need to be considered. But I know that the numbers, they range anywhere from like, and this is approximate in today's costs. And if this thing is to be built one day, it's going to be like years down the road, and these numbers are likely to be higher. But the numbers that we had received were like 20, in the range of the high 20s to, and then the tunnel was the most, I think like, it was like in the $40 to $50 million range.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
George.
Actually, you asked my question about budgeting. That's what I was concerned about.
I did wonder if part of the survey, given that all these constraints started, was a different intersection or a different location evaluated, or was that like a further study option that would be needed to evaluate? So like just looking at the map, if we moved a block south or a couple blocks north, would that change some of the issues with the SFPUC or things like that. And then a follow on is, is there talk about, instead of going over, maybe integrating some of the electrical connections into the bridge? Maybe that might work with Caltrain, but you said that might be more expensive.
Well, it would be expensive to modify their electrification.
Got it.
system and also disrupt their
Got it. Okay.
It could potentially be done, but it's not
an ideal
easy fix.
But in terms of like the location, I'm assuming that there was a reason that this particular intersection was chosen. Were there considerations of going either north or south a couple blocks that would have?
Yeah, so I can tell you this, we looked at a number of different permutations. We used a set of screening criteria. The key one was that there was a key objective not to require the removal of any homes. There's very limited space out here. And so the ones that didn't remove homes are the three you see today.
Got it.
Considering the constraints with all of these construction projects, pretty much, have we considered something as simple as just putting a traffic light with a crosswalk?
Cross train
It would
tracks,
be extremely.
High-speed
difficult,
trains
almost
going?
impossible to add an at-grade crossing.
it's double tracked and it's gonna be super fast, frequent.
Especially with the new electrification.
Although, I mean, people could try to dash, but it'd be like a suicide game.
I mean, they already have problems in Palo Alto with that.
Meadow crossing.
Meadow
They just had another death. of a
Yeah.
Teenager.
Friday.
Yeah. Good. All right, thank you. Great presentation, by the way.
I had a comment. I participated on the study group. And even though this isn't ending with a super affordable, easy to do project, it's worth what we spent on the study because I personally bike, not as much as I should, but I try to bike and I bicycle commuted to work today and back, and I came over here tonight. I live on the other side of the tracks, and there's a pocket neighborhood there. And then there's a pocket neighborhood on this side of the train tracks. And we've seen time and again, freeways and these busy train corridors just split communities in half. But we're not in dire straits because the Fifth Avenue undercrossing is a really nice crossing. It's not that far to bike down a little bit further. And on the north side, I can cut through the Target parking lot and get over to like Chestnut Street and come over and then come down Middlefield. And the Redwood City Middlefield improvement has that nice little bike section. And I cross at the light. It's a little hectic around Costco because everyone wants gas at the same time. But as soon as I get past that, it's pretty nice. And we can continue to do better. The linkages that we suck at are contiguous corridors like north and south, east and west. Marsh Road with that drainage ditch, how would you ride a bike on that? If you want to go to that park over there, Flood Park, you have to like wind through the neighborhoods and come out by Marsh Manor. It's doable, but it's not like logical. In Palo Alto, as soon as I cross the creek, I can just go along the train tracks by the soccer fields, and it goes all the way over like the Embarcadero Town and Country. And it's wide and it's well lit and it's comfortable. And I see walkers and I see other bicyclists every day. We almost need something like that along our section of this corridor, connecting like Redwood City and Menlo Park, because if you're going somewhere semi-distant, that's the only place you can catch a train that's gonna get you there. And so from our neighborhood, we gotta get there. The bus that goes on Middlefield, it's not that frequent. So I wanna take the 22, but if I live over here, I gotta get over the 22. There's little issues, and as long as I'm walking and taking the bus, why not just bike to the train station? But then I have to weave in and out of these neighborhoods. There's like a wall on Pacific Avenue of houses. And then on the other side of the wall is this new affordable housing thing. It would almost be worth the price of buying one of those homes to open up a corridor that would be along the train tracks to give us north-south circulation. And if we could continue that across that Fifth Avenue crossing through Atherton somehow and get down to Menlo Park, because, you know, we got to think regionally. We're not on this alone. But these small improvements will make a difference over time, the aggregate. And that Dumbarton Rail Corridor, I think the county actually owns it. They bought the bridge. And I think they own the right of way.
Hamtramck owns it.
And, you know, even if it's 30 years away before they actually build transit on it, why not have a park, a linear park with bike trails that would connect all these different sections? We get some green space that we desperately need. And we get this like awesome diagonal corridor through the whole North Fair Oaks. I mean, we could think bigger than
The train track right by Marsh Manor.
Marsh Manor.
Like on,
It's the spur, yeah.
yeah,
And it goes-
okay.
Pacific Railroad.
Yeah,
And then
okay.
the burnt down river bridge that's just south of the Dumbarton Bridge.
Yeah.
That's where it like terminates behind.
And
the
when
chain link
Facebook
fence.
wanted to reopen and cross across the
They were
bay.
gonna buy it and rush the project and do all this and that and, well, whatever, didn't happen.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, so another follow-up question, given the affordable housing project that's happening right next to it, was there thoughts about maybe changing occupancy or at least providing information to that project? So maybe they can incorporate that long bridge into whatever they're building at that point? Given, I'm assuming there's gonna be at least a significant height of complex and things like that, so maybe it can be built into that. And mitigate some of the other issues that were showing up, on option C.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The challenge is the timing. That project was already moving forward, when the study started. And so that's the big challenge, but I will say with the Middleville Junction crossing option C bridge, we did show stairs going down to provide a connection to that development because it doesn't actually touch down until you're way over to
Right.
the call center.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like some other urban areas where they have large bridges that move right into the middle of some of these projects, which create a better transit thing. And so you can mitigate like half of the bridge length by ending it in that development if they've got like a space or green space, maybe at the top or on the roofs or something like that. So
Should the project move forward at some future
Yeah.
point in time?
if we can maybe add or
Look at that.
plan for it in 20, 30 years or whatever. We get to it.
10 years, Redwood
years.
Junction West on the other side of the train tracks will be another affordable housing thing.
There you go.
Right where the car wash used to be.
Got it.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't have money to pay for that kind of stuff.
Well, all these crossings, I mean, regardless of what they cost, there is no funding right now for it. You know, this is grant funds.
Got
Other sources.
So the purpose was mostly just study about feasibilities for these crossings and things to consider in the future as this area develops.
It was to follow up on the two plans that Greg mentioned. I mean, one, you know,
Yeah.
the North Fair Oaks community. The North Fair Oaks community plan, and then our own active transportation plan, because they called for certain things and we wanted to see
Mhm.
what might be possible, where they could go. And so this answers a lot of the questions. It also includes community sentiment, you know, what the community wanted and, you know, trade-offs and constraints.
Understood.
So maybe a silly question, but when there is funding to move forward for this, will you stick with the current recommendations based on community sentiment? Or like you have to start all over again in 10 years when funding exists?
So I think the information that came out of this study will be valuable, should, you know, another effort be taken in the future to reconsider a crossing. Of course, conditions change in the future. But I would say that it would provide a base of information that potentially could be built upon, you know, should conditions change and a direction be taken to further pursue something. But at this point in time, the funding for the study, actually our Caltrans grant expires in March. And so we need to wrap it up now.
Got it. Thank you.
Just one more question. When the community was asked what they would like, they want to be able to get, let's say, from the businesses on El Camino over to the businesses on Middlefield Road. So Was there any consideration, would they take a small van, a van service? Is it that they want to get from Target to Middlefield Road? I mean, did they talk about what they wanted from being from one end, from one side to the other?
We did hear, like, as part of the feedback on the different rail crossing options, like what people like. Like, we heard that the Target Shopping Center, which option C, the Millville Junction Bridge connects to, was a popular destination. It also, some of the responses also were somewhat dependent on like where people live. Like, for example, we went to Hoover School, which is in Redwood City, adjacent to North Fair Oaks, and because options, Millville Junction Bridge is kind of closer to where they are, and it could actually provide an alternate access for some of the school kids that live on the south side of the tracks.
Okay.
To Hoover School. You know, we heard a lot of support for that, but then we also heard with option B, the Dumbarton Bridge, which actually rose to the top out of the three options, that people liked the idea of not just connecting to the two existing residential neighborhoods on both sides of the tracks, but like people on the south side of the tracks, they like to go to the local shops in the Middlefield Road, Central Business District area. The possibility of, you mentioned the possibility of a van. I mean, we have heard about, not just run like a shuttle. That also, keep in mind though, that also is, I mean, obviously it doesn't cost millions and millions of dollars to run a shuttle, but it does cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to have frequent, continuous, circulator route. And the other challenge, and Samtrans actually has this issue now, is that they struggle to hire a sufficient number of bus drivers. I mean, the cost of living and just being able to recruit enough, and they're competing against so I could speak to this when I was at Samtrans before the pandemic, but the challenge is that you have a lot of these high-tech companies that have their own bus service, and they're paying higher wages, and you're competing against that as well. So it's really difficult to be able to get a sufficient number of bus drivers. So it's not, even though that is an option, it's not as simple as it may sound.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions, but first I wanted to acknowledge all the work that you and your team put together for this study, because I think it was tremendous, and I appreciate that work. Having said that, I'm really sorry to hear that this project is going to be shelved, because that always happens to communities like North Fair Oaks, unfortunately. And I feel like, our community is badly dissected by infrastructure. We have two train tracks, dissecting the neighborhoods. We have the Hetch Hetchy also dissecting the neighborhood. And, going back to what Vice Chair Whitney was saying about how it is easy for people who live on either side of the Caltrain tracks to go around on Fifth Avenue. It is easy for, able individuals. And I always think in terms of people in wheelchairs and mothers with strollers, because, they're the ones who struggle the most. And so it's not an easy route. And then, going around on Woodside Road, Woodside Road is just, it's not a pedestrian area. People are not supposed to go, across the bridge, walking or cycling. And actually people might get cited, with reason, because no pedestrians are allowed on that side. So that leaves only Fifth Avenue for anybody who lives on either side, wanting to walk or bike. And so the thing is that, the less we consider building proper infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, the more we strangle ourselves with the use of vehicles. Because obviously people opt to take their cars, even if it's just a few blocks to go, for example, to come to the community center, the library, the clinic, or going to Target, et cetera. And so one of the questions I had was, does Caltrain bear any responsibility for accommodating infrastructure for pedestrians?
So that is a good question, and the county has provided comment when projects have come up. I know a few years ago with the high-speed rail environmental impact report, the county did provide comments. But it's somewhat out of our control, but we do try to get, when opportunities present themselves, we do let those entities know the concerns. Because the reality is that, like, as you've noted, the tracks do serve as a barrier.
Yeah, and so my final question is, what would it take for this project to be revived? What does our council have to do, or what can the community do to pursue that bridge of communication or alternative?
Yeah, I can tell you, I mean, in the short term, the county is looking to see what it can do with the community connection aspect. I definitely hear you on the desire, to pursue a rail crossing. That's something that we heard from a lot of folks, even after we shared all the constraints. I think that would be subject to, county leadership to, make a decision on next steps. But right now, there is not funding to continue further studies.
Following up on your great question, which is, who in the county pursues grants? Do you have a grant writing team, or how is that? Because we know this county, Newsom just doubled the deficit for California. We're experiencing budget gaps, so it's not going to come from probably county resources. So I'm just.
So that's how this study got funded. After the county approved its active transportation plan, staff looked at different projects that were identified, and this crossing project was identified as a high priority. And so staff put together an application to Caltrans. We're fortunate to get it funded. But as projects progress into subsequent phases, further study work would need to be done. But ultimately, as you go into design and construction, the costs get higher, and it will be a challenge. When you're talking about something that's many millions of dollars, to get all that from just one source is very difficult. You've got to cobble it from a lot of different sources.
Follow up to both great questions. I understand this project is pretty much shelved for now, but as we look towards the future and try to revisit this when budgets are a bit more dense, would it be Caltrain that funds this, or would this be a North Fair Oaks type of funding project? And considering there are other crossings throughout, San Mateo County, historically has Samtrans funded these, Caltrain funded these, or because it's their tracks as well. So should the burden be completely on North Fair Oaks community, or?
Yeah, so I will share a couple things, and I have to give Caltrain some due, because when they work with third parties, like the county, for instance, on this project, they enter into service agreements for their work, and they charge for their time. We entered an agreement with Caltrain, and all their effort, including a separate bridge constructability review, which they actually used one of their on-call consultants to do. There was no charge to the county for that. So I will say that they did work with us. There is a difference, though, in some other grade separation projects that are in the works, whether it's like Broadway Burlingame or like Menlo Park, Ravenswood, there are crossing projects. Those directly affect the performance of Caltrain. This crossing is a little bit different because we're not removing an existing at-grade crossing, which really impacts the Caltrain service. They're trying to eliminate existing at-grade. There is no crossing that we're addressing here, right? We're trying to put a new crossing over their tracks.
Correct.
It is challenging. What I can tell you though is that the Caltrain worked with us on the study and did not charge the county because it's an equity priority area.
Okay, I'm thinking, thank you for that. I'm thinking more so, if we were to move forward with a option in the future, who would be funding it? Or you guys may not even know that, but I'm just curious, what has been how has it been historically funded for other projects, other crossings with other communities? Does Caltrain pick up that tab, or is it split with the community and Caltrain, or do they not pay it all?
Caltrain typically does not because their funding is directed to have to spend directly on an operations and maintenance.
Just them.
Funding source that they have. And so their hands are tied to some extent at funding this type of.
Yeah, other bicycle and pedestrian crossings, local jurisdictions have applied to different grant funding sources.
I just have one last comment.
Yes.
In addressing his question, it's possible for the community to identify things in their community plan that they want to fund and do like a benefit assessment district or a parcel tax. It's been done in small towns or other places. We're under the county of San Mateo, so it'd be up to our next county supervisor with, us pushing real hard, like we've got a plan for parks or urban forests, some of this, some of that, and connections here, and here. We would support, if you put it on the ballot, this kind of thing, but it would take some political leadership, and a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that, but some will.
Just one follow-up question, and I'm trying to think of it in the map in my head. Would trying to get the Dumbarton Rail from East Palo Alto to Redwood City, would that help this process at all? Like if, I'm trying to think how they run parallel, that if more pressure was put on the county and the cities that are involved to try to get that link through, it's like a bike and pedestrian path.
There is a bike lane on the Dumbarton Bridge.
And then as it travels up to Redwood
Talk
City,
about the Dumbarton Spur, the train
Yeah,
track.
the
the-
burned down wooden bridge.
you're talking about.
Right, yeah, but the spur part on land is an opportunity space that could be transit, but in the meantime could also be this linear park and connection. And there is a Bayfront Trail, which I've ridden a bunch, and you can go behind Facebook, and you can go down by the Palo Alto Airport and golf course, and you can hug the coastline. You actually end up behind Moffett Field. There is some really awesome infrastructure for cyclists, like on the weekends, that it's not a great commute route per se, but for recreation, there's some great connections out there.
So I think to your point, Kathleen, working on that spur would be a completely different project. If that goes, I think we can use a lot of the findings from this report to see how we can connect the rest of the community to that area as it works through it. But I'd imagine it would have to probably go through that Redwood City Junction area, and that when that develops, it would be there. But again, I think the biggest problem sounds like it's the Caltrain tract, and how do we get over that along with the utilities for the water and Hetch Hetchy, because that all kind of conglomerates right in that space, which is where we want that connection. So it just sounds like we'll take the findings and apply them to future tech or future opportunities as they come up.
Merge.
Is that it from
Park,
council members then?
Palo Alto and North Fairhope in one big city.
Any public comment regarding this agenda item tonight?
Are we able to ask questions?
Good.
Yeah.
2 minute limit.
Sure.
Up here, do I have to come up here?
Sure, why not?
Gentlemen, thank you. This is very comprehensive. I am certain that if this railroad crossing project study had been desired for Atherton, there wouldn't be this resistance. So a couple of questions. First of all, number one, just a small thing, your estimates, your rough estimates of costs, I assume they included both land and right-of-way acquisition if it was required.
I know they included soft costs. I think the land, if something were to move forward, because there would be some land acquired and easements as well.
Right.
I think that would need to be further fleshed out. At this point, when you're in the study phase, it's super high level
Okay.
ballpark.
Okay, so there is some allocation in here, some rough numbers. Okay, the other thing is, did the San Francisco PUC come back with any alternative? They just said, hey, we hate this idea because you're gonna mess with our water and we have a right of way, and so we don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything for you, so therefore we're not going to. But then given the indication of what would be a workable solution, and I like your idea, I think you were the one who said, can it be moved north or south? By several blocks to avoid their concern? Or is it purely a matter of, no, we don't want to do it because it's a pain in the neck and you can't give us enough money for us to accommodate that? Because my project manager background says you can do almost anything if you have enough money to solve the problem. Did they give you any indication at all?
They did, the letter that they sent to the county, they said they strongly oppose options A and B. That their preference was the county to move forward with option C. Of course, there is no option that doesn't have challenges.
Of course. Okay, so they gave you no real alternative other than say, we like that one. Thank you, that's all. Thank you. I'd like to advocate that this project not be shelved.
$1 million, please.
Thank you then for public comment. If that's it, we'll move on to item number 5, a canopy tree project.
Use that big hammer really quick.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, for the presentation, this is how I'll introduce myself. I'm Maya Briones. I'm with the Urban Forestry Nonprofit Canopy as the Advocacy Associate. So I'm here today to give the council a brief update of what Canopy has been working on. It's been a little while since I've been here, certainly since I've been here in person. I think I've been here in person since 2019. It's nice to see you all in person. So yeah, just wanted to take a few minutes to give you all an update on the report. For the next slide. Next slide. So we're an urban forestry nonprofit. Our mission is to grow the urban tree canopy in the Mid-Peninsula for the benefit of all. And we do this through 3 programs. Next slide, please. We have a trees program where we plant and care for trees in our various service areas. We have an education program which includes youth education and various lessons with schools, elementary schools and middle schools. And we also have adult education. Our community forestry school just had their first lesson yesterday. And so once a year we have an adult education course as well. And then we have our advocacy program, which is where we engage legislators and other policymakers on tree protection ordinances to advocate for stronger tree protections, but also clear and more transparent policies. I want to first start by just taking a look at the average canopy cover of a couple different communities here in the Mid-Peninsula and acknowledge that there is strong disparities between certain communities. And this is due to a history of historic racist development patterns that has led to some communities being more green and other communities being more gray. So we call this the green gap. And this can be between communities next to each other, different jurisdictions, or it can be within the same community. An example is Menlo Park. Menlo Park with a 27% canopy coverage estimate, but the neighborhood of Bellhaven, which I should have put a bubble over, is east of 101, adjacent to East Palo Alto. That neighborhood has 11 to 13% canopy coverage. So disparities can be within one city or between cities. And next slide, please. So North Fair Oaks, this numbers might seem kind of high, and to those of you who live in North Fair Oaks might think that that's not very accurate, and it's not a very fair representation of the on-the-ground realities for many folks. But this number has to do with the African side of North Fair Oaks, which is Washington. If you're not looking at that side, the canopy coverage percentage is estimated about 11 or 13%. Next slide. So we started our planting program in North Fair Oaks in 2019. And as I went door to door, I heard a lot about extreme heat as being a primary concern of folks in the community, but also concerns of access to healthy food through fruit trees, and then trying to improve air quality is another primary concern. And so we had our first tree planting in 2020 and since have planted 107 trees. 50 of those trees have been private trees, working with residents to select species and plant on their property. And then the other 57 have been across some campuses, both Taft and Hoover. And I want to highlight one project at Hoover Elementary. Next slide, please. Called the Husky Hill Outdoor Classroom. We had, in our previous CAL FIRE grant, we had money for what was called a nature island. And so, which basically is an outdoor classroom. And there, at the time, there was a principal at Hoover who was very enthusiastic about creating an outdoor education space for the students. And there was also a district staff member very enthusiastic and supportive of the idea. And so we wanted to support making this come true. And one way we did that is through, we hired a consulting firm to work with the principal and other staff member to see to put together a design that actualizes all the things they want. So some examples on that design were a stage, this sort of camp feel with redwood benches, other tables, and some shade as well, and of course trees. And so, next slide. Unfortunately, the principal driving this change and the district staff member both left the school shortly after the first planting in 2022. And since then, about 20 new staff members have been hired in the school, and some of these are teachers, some of them are leadership. And so this was a big change at the school. And so with this big change, the classroom has not yet been used or completed with the remaining amenities. We did plant the trees and some shrubs. There are some tables there, and the redwood benches are there, but no stage, no, there was like a proposed storage area for materials and additional artificial shade. However, we did meet with the new family coordinator just a few weeks ago, who's excited about the space and will be encouraging teachers to utilize it. We've replaced some of the dead trees, though actually none of the trees at the outdoor classroom died. It was some of the other trees across campus. And we're working with our education team to implement some planting trees as fun lessons at Hoover to get the students involved in the space, and hopefully be able to replant a few of the shrubs that did make it. Next slide, please. I want to update you on our current funding situation. So our CAL FIRE grant that allowed us to start the planting program in North Fair Oaks did end in 2023. So we are currently looking for new funding sources to continue our tree planting program. So we are currently not planting trees, but we are still collecting interest from people who want trees from us, so that when we do get that funding, we can get started right away and getting people those trees. We have secured funding for education programs. that will start next fiscal year. So this fiscal year ends in June. One is a workforce development program, which is intended to support people getting into the field of urban forestry, arboriculture, and other green careers. And then it was mentioned earlier, a Promotores program with Nuestra Casa, also just new grant we have as well. We also do have remaining at Measure K funding, which we will be using to provide and create environmental education resource for the community. And also we hope to host an Arbor Day event in North Fair Oaks in March to engage residents who are interested in community greening but don't necessarily have the ability to plant a tree on their property, or maybe tree planting is in their avenue. There's lots of ways to create the urban forest that doesn't involve the manual labor of planting a tree. And so we want to make sure we engage folks while we have this sort of gap in tree planting funding. Next slide, please. I wanted to give a reminder to those who do have a canopy planted tree on their property that we offer 3 years of tree care. 3 years from the planting date. And tree care includes pruning and sucker removal. And suckers are when those long branches grow from the base of the tree. We have mulching, restaking, root checkups, and disease and pest assessments. So Aubrey is our tree care coordinator, and her number is there. I want to encourage anyone who has a canopy tree and has questions about how it's doing, please give her a call. And residents who are who do have a tree on their property planted by canopy will start receiving texts in the coming weeks offering tree care visits. Next slide, please. So in our advocacy program, we have an advocacy committee. We are actively looking for a resident of North Fair Oaks to participate and sit on the committee. The role of the advocacy committee is to highlight priorities of the community that person lives in and make sure we have community perspective when advocating and sort of having eyes and ears on the ground of their own specific community. And so we have representation from the other service areas, but not North Fair Oaks. So we would love for someone to join us. And we now have the capacity to hold these committee meetings in Spanish. And so we don't want language to be a barrier to participation. You know, if you speak Spanish and you feel more comfortable speaking Spanish, you're absolutely welcome to come. Anyone interested can attend a meeting and check it out without making any promises. And I'm happy to provide more information. I also brought some advocacy resources that I think you all have. These resources I created because I felt like it often feels like there are too many problems to address, and like we can fall easily into hopelessness and sort of lose direction of what can be done, especially as like residents or like non-legislators. Feels hard. But I want to highlight that there are some things you can do to support the urban forest in North Fair Oaks, whether you're a homeowner or a renter. So there's an English and Spanish version of our we call it a one-pager, that's dedicated to residents. And then there's an English version for policymakers that highlights things people at that level can do, people who work at the county level, such as policies we're advocating for and things like that. And the other flyer that was attached was the advocacy committee flyer. Next, please. I wanted to update you on an event we had last year. We had our first listening session for North Fair Oaks last March. And I want to thank Redwood City PAL for hosting us and for the amazing outreach efforts they did to help us get such a great turnout. Rocio especially did a really amazing job. And I want to thank Nuestra Casa for the translation support during focus groups. And so we had a great turnout of 64 attendees, and thanks to the Measure K funding, we were able to give $100 stipends to each attendee for participating. Next slide, please. And I think it's not gonna like transit, I had too many transitions in my presentation, I don't think it's gonna work, but I want to share some of the things we learned. We found that there is a desire for the prioritization of trees in the public area, but only if maintenance is secured. Because there's a lot of concern for future maintenance and infrastructure damage. Many residents express interest in accepting trees, but renting and living in apartments discourages them. The transition slide that probably won't pop up talked about how just forgot it. Oh, how like what the other two gentlemen were talking about, how increased in developments and building has led to worsened traffic and increased like lack of safety to pedestrians. That was brought up in our meeting as well as a concern for increased development and lack of walkability or safety, being able to walk around the community. Next slide. So there was a transition slide that talked about how the things we've done with this information. One thing is we sent follow-up letters to each attendee summarizing the focus groups and discussion points. We met with Supervisor Slocum and some San Mateo County staff members from different departments to let them know about the session and some of the key points that we learned about. And we propose that we find a way to work together to address some of them if we can. And we are using this information to help us reshape our programs to better reflect what the community is looking for. And that was a big goal of this session. Next slide, please. We have an upcoming event. This information is outdated though. We have a movie night North Fair Oaks. It's free. Family movie night to celebrate Arbor Week. It's going to be at Hoover Elementary. So you just need to bring a chair and a blanket, and snacks and drinks will be provided. We're going to watch the Lorax together. Next slide. And so thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any council members, any questions?
Thank you so much for this presentation and the great work your organization does. I think this is less a question for you and more just a comment and maybe a call to action to this committee, which is you have wonderful organizations trying to plant new trees, but part of the erosion of canopy is developers tearing down existing trees. And especially with the new state housing laws and the builder's remedy, where they get to circumvent roles, it's a larger issue, I think, for not just this council, but the San Mateo Board of Supervisors. But all of this to say is you're sort of adding trees, but I think the erosion is also how do we prevent existing, especially these legacy heritage trees that are enormous. So anyways, thank you.
I think, if you're passionate about, that avenue of urban forestry, our advocacy work really tries to work to solutions for that. It is complicated with housing because housing is an issue in the Bay Area, and it's kind of hard to work around that with the new laws, just like you said.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. Really appreciate the work you did. We've seen a few presentations and really great. I did have a couple questions more related to some of the outreach and things like that. I saw a lot of your outreach seems to be to people who are inclined to trees, but may not know where to go, which is great. I think that's a good first step. Are there plans to start working on people who have shown no interest in trees, but maybe promoting the benefits of having a tree in the area to help change minds? And so that was one. And the other one was, given that a lot of people are interested in trees, but they're landlords or they're renting in their apartments, do you have a program or outreach specifically to landlords and other maybe facilities to tell them why it's beneficial to have trees on their property, things like that.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the landlord issue first is we come across that with, all three of our branching out communities, East Palo Alto, Bellhaven, and Fair Oaks, that, it's difficult, because we don't want to put, resident in an awkward place asking their landlord and maybe having retaliation or some kind of concern there. But it's also hard to get the landlord information. It's also hard to convince landlords that this is something valuable. I think there's also fear from residents that if we plant a tree, that landlord might increase rent. So it's kind of complicated, but we do our best to connect with the landlord whenever possible. If a resident is feeling very enthusiastic about getting a tree. It's not always easy. I wouldn't say we have a program, but it is part of our protocol to.
So I guess maybe a little clarification on that. Have you tried just looking directly at finding landlords, connecting with them and talking to them with or without the resident involved? And so maybe that way it'll keep the residents out of the picture and you can just say, hey, look, we're working to improve your neighborhood, values will go up, things like that. There'll be a lot of benefits to you by having these trees and things like that. So
Yeah, I have done that, and I always have this one thing in my mind, because one time that went really wrong, where I went through the landlord and the resident wasn't happy. I felt like that was a big mistake. It's on my end. And I know we did that on Pierce Road in Bellhaven, going through the landlords, but it was sort of a similar situation where the landlords wanted it, but the tenants weren't exactly enthusiastic.
So then that goes back to the other point about trying to change minds and people needing, 'cause again, this is something that I've encountered with the other work I've been doing with the trees in the North Fair Oaks area is that there's definitely a population of people who don't want trees. They see them as more of a nuisance, a nightmare, causing all sorts of problems and issues. And so they're happier without the trees.
Yeah.
And so.
I run into that almost every day.
Okay.
And it's hard to change minds. It's really a delicate dance to, no one wants to be told what to do. No one wants to feel like they're being talked down to. And
Right.
I want it to be, the term educate can come across as demeaning or hierarchical. And so my perspective is, and philosophy is for collaboration. And so we've brought visuals when canvassing. We have this heat map that's at a parcel level and shows how hot that parcel is. And we could show, the resident when we're door to door, like your house gets this hot, and ask them how they feel about that. Does that seem accurate? And if it does, trees are one way to reduce heat. You're absolutely right. Trees seem like a nuisance, and sometimes the easier way to go might seem like solar or something. And solar is beneficial, but solar doesn't reduce heat, right? Or help clean the air that much. Still, it seems like an easier, less maintenance option. Ever?
Hey, Maya, good seeing you. Thanks for coming out, telling us what canopies up. So I know you mentioned that the CAL FIRE grant ran out already last year, as of last year, but if somebody from North Fair Oaks tomorrow wanted to get a tree from Canopy, can they still ask for it or?
Yeah, I still recommend they reach out to Arlene, and, she can still perform a site visit and check utilities and things like that. But in terms of like getting the planting done, would probably be delayed. We have applied for Inflation Reduction Act and other things that we're going to be hearing from in a few months.
Yeah.
So it might not be delayed that long. Planting season does end sort of in April. In summertime, we don't want to plant, so there is sort of that gap.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Good.
I just want to comment that we used to table at events like the community fair. And we'd try to come up with something to talk to people about, besides like, hey, there's a council, you should come on a Thursday night and hang out with us. And out of all the things that we had flyers for Canopy was the one that people wanted to stop and talk about, you know. They really didn't care about Middlefield Road until actually construction started. They don't care about bridges and all the other abstract stuff and sewers, but a tree. People that you wouldn't think would be interested were signing up like, I want a tree. And it's a touchstone issue, and it really makes a difference in my life as like just someone that walks around and bikes around. There's the parts of town where there's like a canopy of shade that is just beautiful to bike through that street. And then sometimes the neighbors do the lights and Christmas time and fall, and it's like really cool. And you can almost like do a heat map of property values, like where it's got the nice canopy, that's worth the most money. And where people are parking cars on their front lawn and there's nothing but utility boxes on the sidewalk, that's the cheapest part of town. And it really does feel blighted. And I happen to have 2 utility boxes in front of my apartment building, and a telephone pole. But I do have a little maple tree on my front lawn that my landlord has allowed us to continue to nurture, but she did remove the lawn because she didn't like the drought water prices. Yeah, it's a delicate dance with an apartment dweller, but I think it's worth sticking with it and finding ways to make this move forward. Even if we go to Home Depot and ask for a donation of some trees, just so we can plant 10 trees this year while we wait for other funding. I mean, we could just do a bake sale or do whatever it takes, pass the hat and buy 10 trees. We're gonna get 10 trees done no matter what this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we wanna, you know, as you mentioned before, projects get shelved for North Fair Oaks, and that's the last thing I want you all to feel is like our planting program's been shelved. So I wanna say we really are and talking about funding coming up. And we have a new executive director at JP who's very creative, and you know, would definitely go down the route of like hitting up Home Depot in East Palo Alto or over you have.
San Carlos.
Yeah.
We'll just ask them all.
Find always looking for private donors and everything like that to get something.
Another follow-up then, if we, again, I'm all for planting trees. One issue that we've run into, given that it's unincorporated, anytime we are planting trees in the public space, there's a whole insurance mess along with, the county. Have you guys had any progress or made any headway on that aspect of it?
That was a big goal of ours. We were working with Public Works at the county for a while. And we made, only progress we really made is that they have an improved species list. We got them to add more variety of size species and more selection.
Okay.
To that list. So it's a bigger list now, which allows more variety. We were not able to successfully advocate for other things like reducing the permit costs, because that's something residents pay for, and that's our program is free. We don't ask people to pay for stuff. And then the insurance, there's a liability agreement that is intimidating.
Yeah, that was the one thing, because we got, like I said, we had no problem to the permit, we had no problem to all of that. Even the trees we were okay with, you know, whatever they had, we were. But when it got to the liability problem, that's where we ran into a big wall.
Yeah.
I can see Tim looking at me right now. It's like, oh.
Do you know the cost of a permit for a tree?
I know, I was like, I should look it up.
I think it's like 350 or 390.
To plant a tree in your own yard?
Not in your yard, in the public.
Oh, in the
In the
public.
public, like sidewalks, but I think they were reduced it to $100 for some people and stuff like that. They were willing to come down on that.
Do they charge AT&T to plant those utility boxes on my sidewalk?
Yes.
No, I mean, it's like they get away with free shit and they blight my neighborhood.
It seems like that's something we could really take a look at and ask, why are we charging when we have 11 to 13% of trees in the areas of North Fair Oaks, it's just not fair, so we can't
Right.
charge.
Exactly, it's another roadblock.
Another
to-
roadblock.
I'll keep banging on that drum for getting that tree plan that was supposed to be done, what, 2 years ago? So,
How about if we remove all the telephone poles, underground that stuff, and plant a tree everywhere there was a telephone pole?
sign me up,
All right,
do it at night.
small parcel tax,
No more parcel tax.
Would-
Yeah.
Everything goes up.
And just because of, walking the neighborhoods and seeing different yards and how much green space or grass that they have, would planting trees in, big utility buckets, the same value?
So like above, not planting in the ground,
Yeah,
but in
but
pot.
in pots.
They would not reach a size where they would give off shade benefits or even like carbon sequestration benefits.
Okay, so
We definitely thought about folks living in apartments, they do, and can we find a way for dwarf trees in pots? That doesn't close the green gap, right? That doesn't build canopy, but it does give people access to green space. On streets, at some point, maybe that will, I don't know, because the way North Fair Oaks was built, I mean, these are physical barriers. We can't just like widen streets
right.
and tear up sidewalks, because that would conflict with the engagement. So, maybe that is an avenue to go down, but it would not provide some of those benefits.
Some of the benefits, okay. Any other questions from council members? Any public comment? No? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, report outs. Go ahead and start with the county executive report.
we have a representative, county executive tonight.
Connie, how about you from District 4 Supervisors?
Hello, everyone. Just in case no one knows who I am legislative aide to Supervisors Warren Slocum. Just have 3 things to mention. We have a last call for the applications for Independent Citizen Advisory Commission on the Sheriff Office. The application will close tomorrow, so if you have anyone who's interested in applying, please let them know that that's closing. We did publish our newsletter for February, if you want to check that out. We also recommend that you let anyone that you know to follow us on social media. We're trying to be more active and more engaging with the community in that way to let them know of anything that's going on in North Fair Oaks and anything that's happened within the district as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
One question, does that newsletter go out to the North Fair Oaks neighborhood,
Next door?
next door? Thank you.
I don't know, but I can ask.
Okay,
I have not seen.
I've not seen it either, so, okay.
I'll make comment of that. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? And I'm sorry, your name is Connie?
Connie Franco?
Connie Franco. Nice meeting you. Thank you for coming out. My question was, in regards to the, oversight committee you mentioned that is closing tomorrow. I'm wondering if you've had a sufficient number of applicants for that, and if you didn't, will that reopen? The cycle would reopen?
That I don't know, as I'm not working closely on that, but I know that we did have a good number of turnout.
Oh,
And so that the way that it's working is that each district's gonna choose a representative. And so I think so far received good numbers for each district. And so I don't think there would be a need to have to go in again. But
yeah, that's good news.
Yeah.
That's all I needed
We've
to
heard
hear.
50
Great.
people have
any other
applied.
questions?
Excellent.
The chair, Emma has her hand up.
Oh. Emma, go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that, through the chair. Sorry for the noise. I just wanted you to know that this has been the highest number of applicants that we have received in any board and commission that we have thus far. So we have received over 60 applications. And as Connie said, each district will then review the applications and nominate a person that would represent the district, and then it would go to the full board for approval on any nominations or selections. But the applications are still open, and there's over 60 that we received, and that's the highest number for any boards and commission.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma. Any other comments regarding that, or moving on to council member report? Blair, anything from you?
No, we had a long meeting. They were fun this week.
Okay. Carlos is not here. Ever, anything to report?
I went to a meeting about preparedness, community preparedness for emergencies, hosted at the Powell Center, where the Menlo Park Fire District provided emergency kits to attendants, and the event was going to be bilingual, but it turned out to be all in Spanish. The good thing is that almost everybody was a Spanish speaker. And I think it was a good event. It was a great turnout. A lot of information, maybe more than what I would like to see, because, people come out with their heads exploding. There's so much to learn, but I'm glad that at least, some families got exposed to preparedness, and, hopefully the seed was planted about, getting some sort of readiness and planification for their nuclear family. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, it was standing room only, and they only let me in because I knew you.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Niket, anything?
Just want to say, really enjoying Middlefield Road. The driving has been really smooth. Looks like people have adjusted to it, and even walking has been great. Love to see the plants going into the areas of designated spaces. So definitely coming together, and can't wait for all the wires to come down. That's it. Thank you.
George?
Nothing on my end.
On your end? Okay. Kelly, anything to report?
Long meeting, nothing. on my-
Okay. Mariella?
One thing, yes. I would love for everybody driving up and down Middlefield. I mean, it looks beautiful. I love it. It definitely is. We're getting faster from especially Fifth all the way to the railroad tracks. And then we stop a bit, but we continue smoothly. My concern is the parking, loading, unloading, emergency parking in the middle lane and the turn lane. That makes it very dangerous for pedestrians, as it's obstructing, ahead, and especially between like 9 AM and 1 PM, I've noticed it's ridiculous. You have not only big, trucks right in the middle, but you also have just regular cars with emergency lights on, which I'm assuming they're just picking up something, right? Like in a probably nearby.
Lunch.
Exactly. Not from Kuko. But yeah. No, but it's very dangerous. So maybe if we can all kind of study that, and then if there's anything we can do about it, that would be great if it continues. I have noticed this week there was a sheriff kind of up and down, and kind of the siren would go off a little bit if they're parked in red, and I appreciate that. I think that did help. And if that continues, shouldn't be an issue, but something to look out for. That lane isn't made for that, right? It wasn't made.
Yeah.
For
The turning.
And people are using it for that.
Absolutely, all the time, yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of like a.
I'm wondering if there's something with the local businesses, with the sheriff, like a proactive to kind of reset people now that it exists and it's accessible, because it hasn't been. So
Through the
we
chair.
break the habit.
And talk about the alternatives for,
Yes,
the.
Yes. Emma,
Through
go
the chair,
ahead.
this is Emma. Sorry, I can't have my camera on. I think there's something wrong with the cameras over there. So I apologize, Ed, for the earlier background noise. But I wanted just to let you know that I will definitely bring this forward to the sheriff's office. And what I heard you say that between 9 and 1, there is probably more activity that is not as safe. And so I will definitely alert to the sheriff's office to monitor and patrol that a little more.
Thank you, Emma.
All right, thank you, Emma.
Just to, sorry, add on to that, I have also seen a lot of pedestrians doing jaywalking, and so the crosswalks are great, love the visibility, but just watch out for the jaywalkers, because they can't go half a block to be safe, so.
Brooks,
Thank
any-
you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's been a privilege and a pleasure to lead the council over the last 3 years. I think we've accomplished a great deal for the community. I'm really looking forward to what we're gonna do in the coming year. And kind of as an aside and a little teaser for our next meeting, we do our studies, our planning session every March. And this one's gonna be really interesting because the report from Good City, I'm stealing your thunder here a little bit.
No, go for it. No.
The
go
report
for
from
it.
Good City, the consultants that we had come in and review our community plan, look at what we've done, look at the opportunities that are still out there, and that sort of thing is gonna be presented. So we'll get a sense of where we've succeeded in terms of implementing the plan, where our gaps are. I also invited Supervisor Slocum to come in and offer his kind of perspective on what he sees for the community this year, his last year as a supervisor. And then we can roundtable after that, kind of come up with an annual plan and list of areas that we really want to focus on, things that we want to accomplish in 24. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. It's been a useful session for us for the last few years, and I'm happy to see that continue this year. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your support, by the way. Thank you, Tim,
Well, thank
as
you,
well.
Brooks. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brooks.
I just know I have a big role ahead of me and I am looking forward to it. George will be doing this together along with all of you guys. I feel like 2024 is a super important year for North Fair Oaks. If you've listened to any of the candidates running, there's a lot of discussion about North Fair Oaks, and I think we all have very strong feelings. So I'm super grateful to be working with a group that cares deeply about our community, and looking forward to tackling some of the issues that remain. Well, I think being an unincorporated part of the county brings a set of challenges. Other cities have all their commissions and they have all of their departments, and we're kind of out there, and I'm excited for North Fair Oaks for 2024. So thank you for the votes, and I think if there's nothing else, we can adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Bye.
Aye.